In the gilded halls of Boston's most powerful banking dynasty, Emmeline Rothschild has always lived by society's unwritten rules, until Isaiah Blake arrives as the family's new archivist. What begins as professional courtesy between the shy heiress and the brilliant scholar evolves into a secret world of letters hidden within the very books that surround them. Their forbidden correspondence blooms into a love that defies every boundary of race, class, and family expectation in 1920s high society. When their secret is discovered, Emmeline must choose between the golden cage of her inheritance and a love that could cost her everything she's ever known. Before we start this story, comment below for where you're watching us. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Rothschild estate library. Emmeline Rothschild ran her fingers along the spines of leather-bound books, feeling at peace among the thousands of volumes her family had collected over generations. "Miss Rothschild, I've finished cataloging the East Wing collection." Emmeline turned to see Isaiah Blake standing in the doorway. Tall, handsome, with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he held a leather-bound journal in his hands. As the archivist hired to restore and organize the family's private library, he'd been working at the estate for nearly 6 months now. "Thank you, Mr. Blake," she said softly. At 23, Emmeline was nothing like the rest of her powerful banking family. While her older brothers Charles and William dominated boardrooms, and her mother Elizabeth hosted parties for royalty and politicians, Emmeline preferred the quiet of books and her own poetry. "I found something interesting," Isaiah said, stepping forward. "A first edition of Emily Dickinson. I thought you might like to see it." Their fingers brushed as he handed her the book. Emmeline felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the rare find. "How thoughtful," she murmured, opening the delicate pages. "She's my favorite poet." "I remember," Isaiah smiled. "You mentioned it during my interview." The fact that he'd remembered such a small detail made Emmeline's cheeks warm. At 28, Isaiah had an impressive background in library science and preservation, but the Rothschilds had hired him primarily because of his exceptional references. In Boston's elite circles, hiring a black archivist for such a prestigious collection had raised eyebrows, but her father Harold had declared that talent mattered more than tradition. If only that philosophy extended to personal relationships, Emmeline thought. "Would you care for some tea, Mr. Blake?" she asked impulsively. "I was just about to have some brought in." "I like that very much, Miss Rothschild." Their afternoon tea became a daily ritual. They discussed literature, music, and art while surrounded by books. Isaiah spoke of growing up in a family that valued education above all else, of his dreams to open his own bookshop someday. Emmeline shared her poetry, something she'd never done with anyone before. "You have a gift," Isaiah told her one rainy afternoon, after she'd nervously read him a poem about a bird trapped in a golden cage. "Your words have such honesty." "Mother says poetry is a pleasant hobby, but hardly a worthwhile pursuit for a Rothschild," Emmeline admitted. "And what do you think?" Isaiah asked. No one had ever asked her that before. "I think words are the only place I can truly be myself," she answered. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, something dangerous and wonderful. That night, Emmeline couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk and wrote a note to Isaiah, thanking him for his encouragement. The next morning, she slipped it between the pages of a book she knew he'd be cataloging. By afternoon, she found his reply tucked in the same book, left on her usual reading table. "Your words matter. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." And so it began. Notes hidden in books. Small confessions. Thoughts too risky to speak aloud. "I've never met anyone who understands Thoreau the way you do," she wrote. "I've never met anyone who sees the world with such gentle clarity," he replied. Weeks passed. The notes grew longer, more personal. Emmeline found herself rushing to the library each morning, heart pounding as she searched for Isaiah's latest message. "I feel most alive when we're talking among the books," Isaiah wrote one day. "The rest of the world falls away. I count the hours until our conversations," she confessed in return. "They're the brightest part of my day." 3 months into their secret correspondence, Emmeline was sorting through books when she found a letter from Isaiah, longer than his usual notes. She tucked it into her pocket, waiting until she was alone in her bedroom to read it. "Dear Emmeline," it began. He'd never used her first name before. "I know I shouldn't write this. I know the boundaries that exist between us, employer and employee, your world and mine. But I can't keep pretending. These past months getting to know you have been the most meaningful of my life. Your mind, your heart, your soul, they've captivated me completely. I find myself thinking of you at all hours. I know nothing can come of these feelings, but I needed you to know that you are valued, cherished, and yes, loved for exactly who you are." Emmeline pressed the letter to her heart, tears streaming down her face. That night, she wrote back, pouring her soul onto the page. "My dearest Isaiah, I've lived my whole life in a beautiful cage, surrounded by luxury, but never truly seen. Until you see me, not the Rothschild name, not the fortune, but me. I've fallen in love with your brilliant mind, your kind heart, your quiet strength. I know the world would never understand, but in these letters can we create our own world? One where only truth matters." Their letter exchange deepened over the following months. They were careful, never showing special attention to each other when others were present, maintaining proper formality in public. But alone in the library, surrounded by books, they'd talk for hours. And through their letters, they shared their deepest selves. "I love you in every space they say we're not allowed to exist," Isaiah wrote once, a line that Emmeline read so often the paper began to wear thin at the folds. Spring turned to summer, and summer to fall. For over a year, their love existed in ink and whispered conversations. They stole precious moments, fingers brushing while reaching for the same book, eyes meeting across the room, a brief touch on the shoulder that lingered seconds too long. "Mother's planning some big event," Emmeline told Isaiah one afternoon as they shelved books in the library's West Wing. "She's been meeting with event planners all week." "Perhaps your brother's engagement?" Isaiah suggested. Charles, the eldest Rothschild son, had been seeing the daughter of a shipping magnate. "Perhaps," Emmeline said, though something in her mother's secretive smiles made her uneasy. She found out why that evening at dinner. "Darling, wonderful news," Elizabeth Rothschild announced, raising her wine glass. "The Andersons have accepted our proposal. You and James will be married next spring." Emmeline's fork clattered against her plate. "I what?" "James Anderson," her father said, as if she might have forgotten who he was. "Fine young man. Harvard Business School. His family's bank will merge beautifully with our financial services division. But I don't want to marry James Anderson," Emmeline said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother laughed lightly. "Don't be silly, dear. You've known each other since childhood. He's handsome, wealthy, from an excellent family." "I don't love him," Emmeline stated plainly. Harold Rothschild set down his glass. "Emmeline, marriages in families like ours are about more than love. They're about alliances, about strengthening bloodlines and business ties. We're not royalty, father. This is the 21st century. In our circles, certain traditions remain important," Elizabeth said firmly. "The engagement party is in 3 weeks. James is a good match, darling. You'll learn to love him." Emmeline sat frozen, her world collapsing around her. That night, she wrote to Isaiah, her tears staining the paper. "They're forcing me to marry James Anderson. I can't bear it, Isaiah. The thought of a life without you, of belonging to someone else. Please, tell me what to do." His reply came the next day, his usually neat handwriting shaky. "My love, my heart is breaking. I've lain awake all night thinking of you being promised to another man. I have nothing to offer that compares to what Anderson can give you. No fortune, no social standing. Just my heart, my soul, my complete devotion. If you were to walk away from everything for me, you'd lose so much. I cannot ask that of you. But know this, whatever you decide, my love for you is eternal." The days that followed were torture. Emmeline was swept into a whirlwind of engagement preparations, dress fittings, menu tastings, guest lists, all while her heart was dying inside her. She and Isaiah continued their letters, more desperate now, more raw with emotion. "I dream of running away with you," she wrote. of a small apartment filled with books, of waking up beside you each morning, of a simple life filled with real love. If I had the right to ask, he responded, I would ask you to choose that life with me, to choose love over luxury, freedom over family obligation. But the cost would be so high, Emmeline. Your family would cut you off. Society would shun you. I cannot be the cause of such pain in your life. The engagement party drew nearer. Isaiah and Emmeline stole moments in the library when they could, but even those were becoming rare as her mother demanded her presence for endless planning sessions. 1 week before the party, Emmeline made a decision. She wrote the most important letter of her life. My beloved Isaiah, I choose you. Even if they never forgive me, even if we struggle, even if the whole world turns against us. A gilded cage is still a cage, and I would rather live in freedom with you than in luxury without you. Meet me at the gazebo by the lake at midnight after my engagement party. We'll leave together and never look back. All my love, all my heart, all my soul, Emmeline. She sealed the letter and hid it in their usual book, but before Isaiah could find it, disaster struck. The estate was being thoroughly cleaned for the engagement party. Maria, one of the maids, was dusting the library when she noticed a loose panel in the wall behind one of the bookshelves. Curious, she pushed it aside, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a stack of letters tied with ribbon. The special ones, the most intimate ones, that Emmeline and Isaiah had been hiding away from prying eyes. Maria, seeing the Rothschild name and not understanding what she'd found, dutifully brought the letters to Mrs. Rothschild. Elizabeth Rothschild read them that afternoon while Emmeline was out with the wedding planner. Her face grew paler with each page, her hands trembling with shock and rage. When Emmeline returned home, she was summoned immediately to her father's study. Inside, she found both her parents, their faces grim. On the desk lay the stack of letters, their secret exposed. How could you? Her mother whispered, her voice shaking with anger. With an employee? A man who is black. Emmeline finished, lifting her chin. Is that what you can't bring yourself to say, Mother? Harold Rothschild slammed his hand on the desk. This ends now. We've already contacted Isaiah Blake. He's been terminated, effective immediately. He's being escorted from the property as we speak. Emmeline felt the blood drain from her face. No, you can't do that. It's done, her father said coldly. We've also contacted our attorney. Blake signed a non-disclosure agreement when he was hired. If he ever speaks of this, indiscretion, or attempts to contact you, he'll face a lawsuit that will destroy any hope of a future career. How dare you threaten him? Emmeline cried, tears streaming down her face. How dare you bring shame on this family? Elizabeth shot back. Do you have any idea what this would do to our reputation if it got out? The scandal would be unbearable. I love him, Emmeline said simply. Love, her father scoffed. You're a Rothschild. You have responsibilities to this family that go beyond childish infatuations. It's not an infatuation. Enough, Harold roared. You will marry James Anderson as planned. You will never contact this archivist again. And if you attempt to defy us, you will be cut off. No money, no family connections, nothing. Your engagement party is in 1 week, Elizabeth added, her voice ice cold. I suggest you compose yourself and remember your duty to this family. They left her there, surrounded by the scattered evidence of a love they could never understand. Emmeline collapsed into her father's chair, sobbing until she had no tears left. That night, she tried to sneak out to find Isaiah, but discovered her father had posted security guards around the estate. She was a prisoner in her own home. Days passed. Emmeline was never left alone, always accompanied by her mother or the wedding planner or one of the staff who'd been instructed to watch her. She had no way to reach Isaiah, no way to explain, no way to find out if he was okay. The night before the engagement party, Emmeline sat at her window, looking out at the stars, feeling more alone than she ever had in her life. She took out a sheet of paper and wrote one final letter, one she had no way to deliver. My dearest Isaiah, they found our letters. They forced us apart. But know this, my heart remains yours completely and eternally. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever they force me to say or do, I love you. Only you. Always you. Someday, somehow, I will find my way back to you. Wait for me. You're Emmeline." She folded the letter and slipped it into her jewelry box, beside the emerald necklace she was expected to wear to her engagement party the next day. Morning dawned, bright and clear. A perfect day for celebrating love, just not the love in Emmeline's heart. As servants and event staff bustled around the estate, setting up for the evening's festivities, Emmeline sat motionless as her hair was styled and her makeup applied. "You look beautiful, Miss Rothschild," her maid said, adjusting the diamond clips in Emmeline's dark hair. Emmeline stared at her reflection, seeing a stranger in the mirror. A perfect Rothschild daughter in an exquisite designer gown, ready to fulfill her family duty. Inside, she felt nothing but emptiness. "It's time, darling," Elizabeth said, appearing at the bedroom door. "James and his family have arrived. Remember to smile." As Emmeline descended the grand staircase, hundreds of eyes turned to admire her. "Camera flishes popped." James Anderson, handsome in his tuxedo, but with eyes that had never truly seen her, waited at the bottom with a practiced smile. The perfect couple. The perfect merger of powerful families. A perfect lie. Emmeline moved through the evening like a ghost, accepting congratulations, smiling on cue, allowing James to slip the massive diamond engagement ring onto her finger as champagne corks popped and guests applauded. But with each passing hour, something was building inside her. A quiet rebellion. A desperate need for truth. When the orchestra began to play and James led her to the dance floor for their first dance as an engaged couple, Emmeline looked around at the glittering crowd, at her mother's triumphant smile, her father's satisfied nod, the photographer capturing the moment for the society pages. Not one person in this room knew her. Not one person, except the one who wasn't there. As the music swelled, James whispered in her ear, "You'll make a beautiful bride." And suddenly, Emmeline knew she couldn't do it. "Never," Emmeline promised. "I try to get a message to you, but they watch me so closely. Tonight was my first chance to escape." Isaiah looked at her with concern. "They'll be looking for you by now." Probably, she agreed. "But they won't think to look here. At least not right away." Just as the words left her mouth, the bell above the door jingled again. They both turned to see a middle-aged man in an expensive suit standing in the doorway. "Mr. Davis," Emmeline gasped, recognizing her father's attorney. "Miss Rothschild," he said with a nod. "Your father anticipated you might come here." Isaiah stood, positioning himself slightly in front of Emmeline. "She doesn't want to go back." "I'm not here to take her back," Davis said, holding up a hand. "I'm here to deliver this." He held out a thick envelope. Emmeline rose to her feet, cautiously taking the envelope. "What is it?" "You want to see for yourself," Davis replied. "I'll wait outside to give you privacy." After the attorney stepped outside, Emmeline looked at Isaiah with confusion. She opened the envelope with shaking hands and pulled out a stack of legal documents. "What does it say?" Isaiah asked, watching her expression change as she scanned the papers. It's a trust fund," Emmeline said in disbelief. "Set up by my grandmother before she died. It says it comes to me on my 24th birthday or upon announcement of my engagement." "What does that mean?" "It means I have my own money now. Money my parents can't touch or take away." She continued reading, her eyes widening. "There's a letter here from my grandmother." She unfolded the letter, reading aloud. "My dearest Emmeline, I see so much of myself in you. The quiet strength, the love of books, the poet's heart. In my day, I was forced to marry a man I didn't love because it was expected of me. I don't want that for you. This money is yours, no strings attached. Use it to build the life you truly want, not the one others want for you. All my love, Grandmother Eleanor." Tears streamed down Emmeline's face. She knew. Somehow she knew I might need an escape someday. Isaiah took her hand. "What do you want to do?" "First, I want to know how Mr. Davis knew to bring this now." They walked outside where the attorney was waiting by a black car. "Mr. Davis," Emmeline said, "how did you know to bring me these documents tonight?" Davis cleared his throat. "Your grandmother made me promise to watch over you. even after her death. When I heard about the engagement party, I pulled the trust documents, knowing they would be activated. Then when the household staff reported you'd run away, he paused. I made an educated guess about where you might go. Your grandmother would have wanted you to have this information immediately. My parents will be furious with you, Emmeline said. I work for the Rothschild family, but in this matter, my obligation was to honor your grandmother's wishes, Davis said simply. The trust is ironclad. Your parents cannot contest it. Thank you, Emmeline said sincerely. What will you do now, Miss Rothschild? Davis asked. Emmeline looked at Isaiah, then back at the attorney. I'm not sure yet, but I'll be making my own decisions from now on. Davis nodded. I suspected as much. I took the liberty of booking a hotel room for you nearby, somewhere safe to stay while you consider your options. He handed her another envelope containing a key card. Your parents don't know I've found you. I'll tell them I'm still looking. After Davis left, Emmeline and Isaiah returned inside the bookshop. I can't believe what just happened, Emmeline said, still holding the trust documents. This changes everything. How so? Isaiah asked cautiously. It means I'm not destitute. I can support myself without my family. She took his hands in hers. It means we have choices now. Isaiah smiled, but there was still worry in his eyes. Your family won't give up easily, Emmeline. Running away from your engagement party to be with me. They'll see it as the ultimate betrayal. I know, she admitted. But for the first time in my life, I feel free to make my own choices. And I choose you, Isaiah, if you still want me. I have wanted you every day since we met, he said, pulling her close. But are you sure? Your life will never be the same. I'm counting on that, she said with a small smile. They spent the night talking in the bookshop, making plans, sharing their dreams, and reading favorite passages from books surrounding them. When morning came, Isaiah walked Emmeline to the hotel Davis had arranged. Get some rest, he said, kissing her hand in the lobby. I'll come back this evening after I close the shop. I'll be waiting, she promised. Once in her hotel room, exhaustion hit Emmeline like a wave. She slipped out of her engagement gown, hung it in the closet, and fell into a deep sleep for the first time in weeks. She woke hours later to insistent knocking. Groggy and disoriented, she pulled on the hotel robe and opened the door, expecting Isaiah or perhaps Mr. Davis. Instead, she found her mother, immaculately dressed as always, her face a mask of cold fury. Mother, Emmeline gasped. How did you find me? Elizabeth Rothschild pushed past her daughter into the room. Did you really think you could embarrass our family this way and just disappear? Do you have any idea what you've done? I couldn't marry James, Emmeline said firmly. I don't love him. Love? Elizabeth scoffed. What does love have to do with marriage in our world? You had a responsibility to this family. I have a responsibility to myself too, Emmeline countered. Grandmother Eleanor understood that. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. So Davis found you. I should have known he'd betray us. He was honoring grandmother's wishes. Your grandmother was a romantic fool, Elizabeth snapped. And now you're following her footsteps, throwing everything away for some librarian. Isaiah is an archivist and scholar, Emmeline corrected. And I love him. You've known him for what? A year? You've known James your entire life. Knowing someone isn't the same as loving them, Emmeline said quietly. And yes, I've known Isaiah for a short time, but in that time, he's understood me better than anyone in my family ever has. Elizabeth sank into a chair, suddenly looking older than her years. The Andersons are threatening to sue for breach of promise. Your father had to write a check for $5 million just to get them to hold off going to the press. Do you understand what this means for our reputation? For a moment, Emmeline felt a pang of guilt. Then she remembered the years of feeling invisible in her own family, of having her dreams and desires dismissed as frivolous. I'm sorry for the embarrassment I've caused, she said carefully, but I'm not sorry I left. I couldn't live that life anymore, Mother. And what life do you think you'll have with him? Elizabeth demanded. Living above a bookshop? Counting pennies? You've never even done your own laundry, Emmeline. Then I'll learn, Emmeline said simply. I have my trust fund now. I won't be destitute. Elizabeth's lips thinned. Your father is talking about contesting the trust, finding some legal loophole. Mr. Davis says it's ironclad. Davis is fired as of this morning. Emmeline felt a surge of protectiveness for the attorney who had helped her. That's not fair. He was just doing his job. His job was to protect this family's interests. His job was to execute grandmother's wishes, Emmeline countered. And he did. Elizabeth stood, smoothing her skirt. Your father wanted to come himself, but he's busy dealing with the press. He wanted me to tell you that you have 24 hours to come to your senses. Come home, apologize to the Andersons, and we can perhaps salvage this situation. Otherwise what? Otherwise, you're no longer a Rothschild, Elizabeth said coldly. No invitations to family events. No holidays. No relationship with your brothers or cousins. Complete excommunication from the family. The threat hit Emmeline hard. Despite everything, she loved her family. The thought of never seeing her brothers again, of being cut off completely, made her stomach clench. That's cruel, Mother, she whispered. What's cruel is what you've done to this family, Elizabeth replied. 24 hours, Emmeline. I've booked the adjoining room. I'll wait for your decision. After her mother left, Emmeline sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. She'd expected anger, even threats to cut off her money, but not complete banishment from the family. Could she really give up everyone and everything she'd ever known for a chance at love with Isaiah? She was still sitting there when her phone rang. It was Isaiah. Are you okay? He asked immediately. You sound upset. My mother found me, Emmeline explained. She's here in the hotel. What happened? She gave me an ultimatum. 24 hours to come home and apologize, or I'm cut off from the family completely. Not just financially, but everything. Everyone. There was silence on the other end of the line. Isaiah. I'm here, he said softly. Emmeline, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Of course. Are you having second thoughts? Because if you are, I would understand. We are being asked to give up. No, she interrupted firmly. I'm not having second thoughts about us. I'm scared, yes. The thought of losing my family hurts terribly. But the thought of losing you, her voice broke. That would break me completely. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Isaiah said. Wait for me. True to his word, Isaiah arrived at her hotel room door shortly after. Emmeline fell into his arms the moment she saw him. I've been thinking, he said as they sat together on the small sofa in her room. Maybe there's a middle path here. What do you mean? Your mother is angry now. Your father too. But over time, they might soften. Especially if they see you're happy, that you've built a good life. You don't know my family, Emmeline said sadly. They hold grudges for generations. Even so, making a clean break might not be necessary. What if we left Boston for a while? Gave everyone some space to cool down. Emmeline looked at him curiously. Leave? And go where? I've been offered a position at the University of California's rare book collection, Isaiah explained. It's a 2-year contract. I turned it down because... He smiled ruefully. Because I couldn't bear the thought of being that far from you. But now, maybe it's exactly what we need. California, Emmeline repeated, testing the word. That's so far away. A fresh start, Isaiah said. Away from your family's influence, away from the gossip and pressure. Just us figuring out who we are together. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. When will we need to leave? The position starts in 3 weeks. It's not much time, I know. Emmeline thought about it. California, a place where no one knew the Rothschild name, where she could just be Emmeline, where she and Isaiah could build something real together without the shadow of her family hanging over them. Yes, she said suddenly. Let's do it. Let's go to California. Isaiah's face lit up. Really? You're sure? I'm sure about you, she said, touching his face. Everything else we can figure out together. They spent the evening making plans, where they would live, what Emmeline might do in California, how they would travel there. For the first time, Emmeline felt truly excited about her future. The next morning, she asked Isaiah to give her a few hours alone. There was something she needed to do. She knocked on her mother's hotel room door, her heart pounding, but her resolve firm. Elizabeth opened the door, eyebrows raised in question. Have you made your decision? I have, Emmeline said, stepping into the room. I'm not coming home, Mother. I'm going to California with Isaiah. He's been offered a position at a university there. Elizabeth's face hardened. So that's it? You're choosing him over your family? Over everything we've built for you? I'm choosing myself, Emmeline corrected gently. For the first time in my life. And yes, I'm choosing love over duty. Happiness over expectation. You'll regret this, Elizabeth warned. When the excitement fades and real life sets in, you'll realize what you've thrown away. Maybe, Emmeline conceded, but I'd regret never trying much more. She took a deep breath and continued. I'm not asking for your blessing. I know I won't get it, but I'm asking you to leave the door open, just a crack. Don't cut me off completely, Mother. Let me write to you at least. Let me send pictures. Let me show you that this isn't a mistake. Elizabeth was silent for a long moment. Your father won't agree to that. Then don't tell him, Emmeline suggested. Keep it between us, mother to daughter. Something flickered in Elizabeth's eyes. A brief softening, perhaps even a hint of admiration for her daughter's courage. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I can promise. It wasn't much, but it was something. A tiny thread still connecting Emmeline to her past as she stepped into her future. Thank you, Emmeline said sincerely. She reached in her purse and pulled out a small package wrapped in tissue paper. This is for you, to remember me by. Elizabeth took it cautiously, unwrapping it to reveal a small leather-bound book. What is this? My poetry, Emmeline explained. The pieces I've written over the years that I never showed anyone, except Isaiah. And now you. Elizabeth's fingers traced the cover, an unreadable expression on her face. I didn't know you still wrote poetry. There's a lot you don't know about me, Mother. Maybe someday you'll want to learn. Back in her own room, Emmeline called Isaiah to tell him about the conversation with her mother. It went better than I expected, she admitted. She didn't exactly give her blessing, but she didn't slam the door in my face either. That's progress, Isaiah said encouragingly. Give her time, Emmeline. This is a lot for them to process. I know, but right now, I don't want to think about my family anymore. Tell me more about California. Tell me about our future. Over the next 2 weeks, Emmeline and Isaiah prepared for their move. She opened her own bank account for the first time, transferring funds from her trust. She bought casual clothes to replace her designer wardrobe. Isaiah secured an apartment near the university, sending Emmeline pictures of the tree-lined street and the small balcony where they could put plants. The night before they were set to leave, they had dinner at a small Italian restaurant near Isaiah's bookshop. Are you nervous? Isaiah asked, watching her push pasta around her plate. A little, she admitted. I've never been so far from home before. Never been so independent. We'll figure it out together, he promised. One day at a time. Emmeline reached across the table to take his hand. I've been thinking about our story, how it started with letters hidden in books. The letters they were never meant to read, Isaiah said with a smile, referring to her family. But they did read them, Emmeline pointed out. In a way, I'm glad. It forced everything into the open. It gave us this chance. Isaiah squeezed her hand. I used to dream about a moment like this, but I never truly believed it could happen. You and me, about to start a new life together. Believe it, Emmeline said, her eyes shining with love and determination. It's real. We're real. As they walked back to the hotel where Emmeline was staying one last night, a black car pulled up beside them. The window rolled down to reveal Mr. Davis. Miss Rothschild, Mr. Blake, he greeted them. I'm glad I caught you before you left. Mr. Davis, Emmeline said in surprise. I thought you were fired. I was, he confirmed. But I have something for you. May I have a moment? They stepped to the side, and Davis handed Emmeline another envelope. This arrived at my office today. I thought you should have it before you leave for California. Emmeline opened it, pulling out a single sheet of expensive stationery. She recognized her father's handwriting immediately. What does it say? Isaiah asked, seeing her expression change. It's from my father, Emmeline said, her voice barely above a whisper. He says while he doesn't approve of my choices, he respects my right to make them. He's not cutting me off from the family. He says I'm still a Rothschild, whether I like it or not. She looked up at Isaiah, tears in her eyes. He says I can come home for Christmas if I want to. And she swallowed hard. and that you would be welcome too, if we're still together by then. Isaiah's eyes widened in surprise. Your father wrote that? He did, Emmeline confirmed, still stunned. It's not exactly a warm invitation, but it's something. It's a beginning, Isaiah said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Emmeline turned to Davis. Thank you for bringing this to me. It means more than you know. Your grandmother will be proud of you, Davis said simply. Safe travels to California, both of you. As they continued walking, Emmeline felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Her path forward was still uncertain, full of challenges she'd never faced before. But for the first time, she wasn't walking it alone. And maybe, just maybe, she hadn't lost her family completely after all. What are you thinking? Isaiah asked. Noticing her thoughtful expression, Emmeline smiled up at him, her heart full. I'm thinking about writing new letters. Not secret ones this time. Real ones that tell our story as it unfolds. I'd like that, Isaiah said, kissing her softly. Very much. That night, as Emmeline packed the last of her belongings for their early morning flight, she wrote the first entry in a new journal. Today marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Tomorrow, Isaiah and I leave for California to start our life together. I'm terrified and exhilarated all at once. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time, it's truly mine to discover. Our story began with secret letters hidden in books. Now we're writing it together, out in the open, one page at a time. She closed the journal, placed it carefully in her carry-on bag, and looked around the hotel room one last time. In the morning, she would leave behind the only life she'd ever known and step into an uncertain future with the man she loved. Emmeline had never felt more ready for anything in her life. The California sun streamed through the windows of Isaiah and Emmeline's small apartment near Berkeley. 3 months had passed since they'd left Boston behind, and Emmeline was still getting used to the casual West Coast lifestyle. No formal dinners, no society galas, no family expectations weighing her down. Coffee's ready, Isaiah called from their tiny kitchen. He was already dressed for work in casual slacks and a button-down shirt, his ID badge for the university library clipped to his belt. Emmeline emerged from the bedroom in jeans and a simple blouse, clothing her mother would have considered suitable only for gardening. Thanks, she said, accepting the mug he offered. Big day at the library? We're unpacking a collection of first editions donated by a Silicon Valley CEO, Isaiah said, excitement clear in his voice. Some of them date back to the 1700s. I'm jealous, Emmeline said with a smile. Meanwhile, I'll be alphabetizing poetry anthologies at the Bookworm. Shortly after arriving in California, Emmeline had taken a job at a local independent bookstore. The owner, Maggie Chun, was a retired literature professor who had taken an immediate liking to Emmeline's knowledge of poetry and classics. You love that bookstore, Isaiah pointed out. I do, Emmeline admitted. It's just so different from what I thought my life would be. Isaiah studied her face. Having regrets? Not about us, she assured him quickly. Never about us. It's just, I went from being Emmeline Rothschild, heiress to one of New England's most powerful families, to being a bookstore clerk making minimum wage plus tips. Plus your trust fund, Isaiah reminded her gently. Which I'm trying not to touch, Emmeline said. I want to make it on my own, prove I can stand on my own 2 feet. Isaiah wrapped his arms around her. I'm proud of you, you know that? Most people in your position would have crumbled by now. Most people in my position would never have left in the first place, she replied with a small laugh. After breakfast, they walked together to the bus stop. Another new experience for Emmeline, public transportation. In Boston, she'd never gone anywhere without a driver. Dinner at Lucia's tonight? Isaiah asked as they prepared to head in different directions. To celebrate your day off tomorrow. Perfect, Emmeline agreed. Lucia's was a small Italian restaurant they'd discovered during their first week in Berkeley. It had become their special place for celebrations and date nights. They kissed goodbye, and Emmeline watched Isaiah board his bus before walking the 3 blocks to the Bookworm. The small bell over the door jangled as she entered, reminding her of the night she'd found Isaiah at his shop in Boston. Morning, Emma, Maggie called from behind the counter. Emmeline had started using the shortened version of her name in California, a small way of creating distance from her former life. Morning, Maggie. What needs doing today? New shipment came in. Poetry and memoirs, right up your alley. Emmeline loved the rhythm of the bookstore, unpacking new arrivals, arranging displays, helping customers find the perfect book. It was honest work, meaningful in its own way. And unlike her life in Boston, here people valued her for her knowledge and hard work, not her family name. As she shelved books, Emmeline's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her brother Charles. Father had minor heart attack last night. He's stable. Thought you should know. Emmeline nearly dropped the books she was holding. She stepped outside to call Charles immediately. What happened? She asked as soon as he answered. Chest pains during a board meeting, Charles explained. They rushed him to Mass General. It was a mild attack, but still serious at his age. Is he okay? Really okay? Yes, he's stable. They're keeping him for observation, but the doctors say he should make a full recovery with some lifestyle changes. Emmeline leaned against the bookstore's brick wall, her heart racing. Should I come home? There was a pause on the other end of the line. I don't know. Mother's pretty upset. Because of Father's heart attack, or because of me? Both, probably, Charles admitted. She blames the stress of your situation for contributing to his condition. Emmeline closed her eyes, guilt washing over her. That's not fair. I know, but you know Mother. Will you keep me updated? Please. Of course, Charles promised. How are you doing, by the way? Really? It was the first time anyone in her family had asked about her well-being since she'd left. I'm adjusting, she said honestly. It's a different life, but I'm happy, Charles. Isaiah is good to me. We're building something real together. I'm glad, her brother said, surprising her. I may not understand your choices, Em, but I want you to be happy. Tears pricked at Emmeline's eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. After hanging up, Emmeline took a few deep breaths before returning inside. She texted Isaiah about her father, and he responded immediately. Do you need to go to Boston? I'll support whatever you decide. His unconditional support made her heart swell. She replied, Not yet. Charles will keep me updated. Let's talk tonight. The rest of her workday passed in a blur. By closing time, Emmeline was emotionally exhausted. She declined Maggie's offer of tea and headed straight to Lucia's to meet Isaiah. He was already waiting at their usual corner table when she arrived. One look at her face, and he stood to embrace her. Any more news? He asked as they sat down. No, but I keep thinking. Emmeline twisted her napkin nervously. What if it had been worse? What if he had died, and the last thing between us was anger and disappointment? Isaiah reached across the table to take her hand. Do you want to go see him? I don't know, she admitted. Part of me says yes, absolutely. He's my father. But another part is afraid of opening old wounds, of facing my mother's accusations. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, Isaiah assured her. If you want to go to Boston, we'll go to Boston. Emmeline squeezed his hand gratefully. Let's see how he does overnight. I'll decide in the morning. They ordered their usual spaghetti for Isaiah, ravioli for Emmeline, but she just pushed the food around her plate, her appetite gone. There's something else bothering you, Isaiah observed. What is it? Emmeline sighed. Charles asked about me, how I was doing. It made me realize how cut off I've been from my family. I haven't spoken to my younger brother William at all. My cousins probably think I've lost my mind. The only communication I've had is the occasional text from Charles and that one stiff letter from my father. Do you miss them? Yes, she admitted. Despite everything, I miss them. They're my family. Maybe this is an opportunity, Isaiah suggested carefully. Not your father's heart attack. That's terrible, but maybe this is a chance to begin rebuilding some bridges. Maybe, Emmeline agreed. But I'm scared, Isaiah. Scared they'll try to pull me back into that world, or that they'll reject me all over again. You're stronger now, he reminded her. 3 months ago, you were Emmeline Rothschild, the sheltered heiress who'd never made a decision for herself. Now you're Emma Blake, the woman who takes the bus to work, pays her own bills, and stands up for what she believes in. Emmeline looked up in surprise. Blake. Isaiah's cheeks darkened. I just meant, since you're using Emma now, I thought. He trailed off, embarrassed. Are you asking me to marry you? Emmeline asked, a smile spreading across her face despite the emotional day. Not exactly how I planned to do it, Isaiah admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. I have a ring at home. I was waiting for the right moment. This is the right moment, Emmeline said softly. I would be honored to be Emma Blake. Their celebratory mood was interrupted by Emmeline's phone ringing. It was Charles again. He said, his voice tight with worry. Father had another episode. It's more serious this time. The doctors are concerned. Emmeline's hand tightened around the phone. How serious? They're talking about surgery. Triple bypass. I'm coming, Emmeline said immediately. I'll get on the first flight I can. After hanging up, she looked at Isaiah, her eyes wide with fear. I have to go to Boston. We'll go together, Isaiah said firmly. I'll book the flights while you pack. They rushed home to their apartment, throwing essentials into suitcases while Isaiah searched for flights on his laptop. There's a red-eye tonight, he announced. We can just make it if we hurry. As they packed, Emmeline's phone rang again. This time, it was her mother. Emmeline answered cautiously. Mother, Emmeline. Elizabeth Rothschild's voice was strained but controlled. Charles tells me you're coming to Boston. Yes, we're booking flights now. There was a pause. We, Isaiah and I, we're coming together. Another pause, longer this time. That won't be necessary. Your father needs calm and quiet. Having him, that would only cause stress. Emmeline closed her eyes, counting to 10 silently. Isaiah is my fiancé now, Mother. We're getting married. Where I go, he goes. Fiancé. Elizabeth's voice rose. Emmeline, be reasonable. I'm being reasonable, Emmeline interrupted. I'm coming to support my father during a health crisis. Isaiah is coming to support me. It's that simple. Your father is in a delicate state, Elizabeth said, her voice hardening. The sight of that man in his hospital room could trigger another attack. His name is Isaiah, Mother, and Father invited him to Christmas, if you recall. That was before all this happened. Emmeline took a deep breath. Here's what's going to happen. Isaiah and I are flying to Boston tonight. We'll get a hotel room near the hospital. I will come to see Father, alone at first, if that makes things easier. But Isaiah will be with me in Boston, and at some point, you're going to have to accept that. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, surprisingly, a sigh of resignation. Fine, Elizabeth said finally. But I'm holding you responsible if your father's condition worsens because of this. After hanging up, Emmeline sat heavily on the edge of their bed. That went about as well as expected. Isaiah sat beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. We could do this differently if you need to. I can stay here while you go. No, Emmeline said firmly. We're a team now. I'm not going to let my mother dictate our relationship. But if it would be easier for your father, my father's letter suggested he was at least willing to try, Emmeline pointed out. It's my mother who can't let go of her prejudices. Hours later, they were on a plane bound for Boston. Emmeline stared out the window at the darkness, her mind racing with worry for her father and anxiety about what awaited them. Try to sleep, Isaiah suggested, covering her hand with his. Tomorrow will be challenging enough without exhaustion. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, Emmeline found herself thinking about the last time she'd seen her father at the engagement party she'd fled. The look of shock and betrayal on his face as she'd pulled away from James Anderson on the dance floor. Had that moment contributed to his heart problems? Was her mother right to blame her? They landed in Boston early the next morning, bleary-eyed and tense. After checking into a hotel near Massachusetts General Hospital, Emmeline called Charles to get an update. He's scheduled for surgery tomorrow morning, Charles told her. He's stable for now, but the doctors say the blockages are severe. I'm coming to the hospital now, Emmeline said. I'll meet you in the lobby, her brother offered. An hour later, freshly showered but still anxious, Emmeline kissed Isaiah goodbye in their hotel room. Call me if you need anything, he said. I'll be right here. I shouldn't be long, she promised. Just long enough to see Father and talk to the doctors. Charles was waiting as promised when Emmeline arrived at the hospital. Her normally polished brother looked tired, his expensive suit slightly rumpled. He said, pulling her into a hug. Thank you for coming. Of course I came, she said. He's our father. As they rode the elevator to the cardiac care unit, Charles filled her in on their father's condition. 3 blocked arteries. The doctors say it's been building for years. Too much stress, too much rich food, not enough exercise. Is he awake? Coherent. Yes, though the medications make him a bit groggy. Mother's with him now. I should warn you she's on edge. When isn't she? Emmeline said with a weak smile. Outside her father's room, Emmeline paused to gather her courage. It had been 3 months since she'd last seen her parents. 3 months of building a new life far from their influence. Now she was about to step back into the Rothschild orbit, if only temporarily. Charles squeezed her shoulder encouragingly. It'll be okay. He asked for you, you know. When they were preparing him for surgery, he specifically asked if you'd been called. That gave Emmeline the strength to push open the door and step inside. The sight of her powerful father looking small and pale in a hospital bed made her heart clench. Harold Rothschild had always seemed invincible, a titan of finance who controlled rooms with his mere presence. Now, connected to monitors and 4 lines, he appeared mortal for the first time in Emmeline's life. Elizabeth sat beside the bed, her perfect posture and immaculate appearance at odds with the sterile hospital setting. She looked up as Emmeline entered, her expression unreadable. "Father," Emmeline said softly, moving to the bed. Harold's eyes opened slowly. For a moment, he seemed confused. Then recognition dawned. "Emmeline," he said, his voice weaker than she remembered. "You came." "Of course I did," she said, taking his hand. "How are you feeling?" Like an old fool who should have listened to his doctors years ago, Harold admitted with a ghost of his usual dry humor. Elizabeth stood. "I'll give you a few minutes," she said stiffly, brushing past Emmeline without meeting her eyes. When they were alone, Harold studied his daughter's face. "California agrees with you. You look different. Happier," Emmeline suggested. Perhaps, he conceded, though a bit thinner. "Are you eating properly?" The ordinary parental concern nearly broke Emmeline's composure. "Yes, father. Isaiah is actually a good cook." Harold's expression tightened slightly at the mention of Isaiah's name, but he didn't comment on it. Instead, he asked, "What are you doing there?" "For work, I mean." "I'm working at a bookstore," Emmeline told him, "and taking some writing courses at the university where Isaiah works." "A bookstore," Harold repeated. "I see. It's not what you had planned for me," Emmeline acknowledged. "But I'm learning a lot. About books, about people, about standing on my own 2 feet. Your trust fund helps with that, I imagine," Harold said with a touch of his old sharpness. "Actually, I've barely touched it," Emmeline replied. "We live on Isaiah's salary and what I make at the bookstore. It's not much, but it's enough." Something like surprise, or perhaps respect, flickered in her father's eyes. "And you're happy with this arrangement?" "I am," Emmeline said simply. "Happier than I've ever been." Harold was quiet for a moment, his eyes on their joined hands. "Your mother tells me he came with you to Boston." "Yes. We're engaged now, father." Harold's eyebrows rose. "Rather quick, isn't it?" "When you know, you know," Emmeline said, echoing words she'd heard her father say about his own whirlwind courtship of her mother decades ago. A faint smile touched Harold's lips. "Using my own words against me. Clever girl. I learned from the best negotiator in Boston," Emmeline replied with a small smile of her own. The moment of warmth between them was interrupted by a nurse entering to check Harold's vitals. "Your father needs to rest before some tests," the nurse informed Emmeline. "You can come back this afternoon." "I'll be back later," Emmeline promised, squeezing her father's hand. "Try to rest." In the hallway, she found her mother and Charles waiting. Elizabeth's expression was still cold, but there was a flicker of vulnerability beneath the surface. "The doctors want to run more tests before tomorrow's surgery," Charles explained. "We should go get some coffee, let father rest." In the hospital cafeteria, the 3 Rothschilds sat at a corner table, an uncomfortable silence hanging over them. "He seems weaker than I expected," Emmeline finally said. "This has been building for months," Elizabeth replied pointedly. "The stress of your departure didn't help matters." Charles intervened before an argument could start. "The doctors say his chances are good. The surgery has a high success rate." "That's comforting," Emmeline said, grateful for her brother's diplomatic intervention. Elizabeth studied her daughter over the rim of her coffee cup. Charles tells me you're working in a bookstore. Yes, it's small but popular. The owner is a former literature professor. And this satisfies you? After the education we provided? The opportunities you had? I'm also taking writing courses, Emmeline added. I'm working on a collection of poetry. Elizabeth's lips thinned. Poetry. Your grandmother's influence, no doubt. Grandmother saw something in me that you and father never did, Emmeline said quietly. A love of words, of art. Something that couldn't be measured in stock portfolios or social connections. We saw it. Elizabeth contradicted unexpectedly. We simply thought it was impractical. Before Emmeline could respond to this surprising admission, her phone buzzed with a text from Isaiah. How's it going? Everything okay? She texted back quickly. Father is stable. Having coffee with Mother and Charles now. We'll call soon. Looking up, she found her mother watching her. Isaiah. Elizabeth guessed. Yes, he's concerned about Father. Elizabeth's expression suggested she doubted that, but she held her tongue. Charles changed the subject to safer territory. William's law school progress, their cousin's new baby, updates on family businesses. For a while, it almost felt normal, the three of them talking over coffee like any family. Then Elizabeth abruptly asked, Where are you staying while you're in Boston? The Fairmont, Emmeline replied. Near the hospital. Unnecessary expense, Elizabeth declared. The house has plenty of room. Emmeline blinked in surprise. Was her mother actually inviting her to stay at the family home? That's kind, she said carefully. But Isaiah is with me, and I don't think he can stay as well, Elizabeth said, though the words seemed to cost her considerable effort. In the guest room, of course. Charles looked as shocked as Emmeline felt. Mother, are you sure? Your father's surgery is tomorrow, Elizabeth said briskly. We should all be together as a family tonight. Even if, she didn't finish the thought, but the implication was clear, even if the worst happened. Let me talk to Isaiah, Emmeline said. I'll let you know. When she called Isaiah from a quiet corner of the hospital, he was understandably hesitant. Are you sure this is a good idea? He asked. Your mother has made her feelings about me pretty clear. I'm as surprised as you are, Emmeline admitted. But I think she's genuinely worried about Father. This might be an olive branch, Isaiah. A small one, but still. If you think it's the right move, then I'm with you, Isaiah said. But maybe I should stay in the background. Make this about you reconnecting with your family. We're a package deal now, Emmeline insisted. If they want me back in their lives, even temporarily, they need to accept that. That evening, a Rothschild family car collected Emmeline and Isaiah from their hotel and brought them to the estate where Emmeline had grown up. As they drove through the gates, Emmeline felt a strange mix of nostalgia and detachment. This had been home for 23 years, yet now it felt like visiting a museum of her former life. This is where you grew up? Isaiah asked quietly as they approached the imposing mansion. Yes, Emmeline replied. Hard to believe, isn't it? It explains a lot, he said, squeezing her hand. About why you value simplicity now. The driver delivered them to the front entrance where Charles was waiting. He greeted Emmeline with a hug and extended his hand to Isaiah. Welcome, he said formally. Thank you for coming. Isaiah shook his hand firmly. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Inside, the house was just as Emmeline remembered. Opulent, immaculate, and oddly cold despite the valuable artwork and antiques that filled every room. A maid took their bags, and Charles led them to the drawing room where Elizabeth was waiting. She rose as they entered, her eyes moving from Emmeline to Isaiah and back again. Welcome home, Emmeline, she said stiffly, before turning to Isaiah. Mr. Blake, thank you for accompanying my daughter during this difficult time. Mrs. Rothschild, Isaiah replied with perfect politeness. I'm very sorry about your husband's condition. I hope his surgery goes well tomorrow. A flicker of surprise crossed Elizabeth's face, as if she'd expected something different from him. Less polish, perhaps, or less genuine concern. Dinner will be served shortly, she said. I assume you'd like to freshen up first. As they followed Charles upstairs, Emmeline whispered to Isaiah, That went better than expected. The night is young, he replied with a wry smile. They were given separate rooms, as Elizabeth had stipulated. Emmeline's was her childhood bedroom, preserved exactly as she'd left it 3 months earlier. Isaiah was placed in a guest room down the hall. As Emmeline unpacked a few things, there was a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find her younger brother William standing there, a hesitant smile on his face. "Will," she exclaimed, pulling him into a hug. "I didn't know you were home from law school. Came back as soon as I heard about Dad," he explained, returning her embrace. "It's good to see you, Em. Really good." They sat on her bed like they used to when they were children, catching up on the past 3 months. William, always the most easygoing of the Rothschild siblings, asked genuine questions about her life in California, about Isaiah, about her job in writing. "You seem lighter somehow," he observed, "like you've shed a weight you've been carrying." "That's exactly how it feels," Emmeline admitted. "Like I can finally breathe." "I'm happy for you," William said sincerely, "even if Mother and Father don't understand yet." "What about you?" Emmeline asked. "Are you happy at law school?" "Really?" William shrugged. "It's what Father always wanted for me." "That's not what I asked." Her brother looked down, then admitted quietly, "I'd rather be studying environmental science. But you know how it is. Rothschild men are lawyers or bankers." End of story. Emmeline took his hand. "It doesn't have to be that way, Will. Look at me. I broke the mold, and yes, it was hard, but I've never been happier." "Maybe," William said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Anyway, I should let you get ready for dinner. And I want to meet this Isaiah who's turned our family upside down." "You'll like him," Emmeline promised. "Everyone does, except Mother. Mother doesn't like anyone who threatens her control," William pointed out with a wry smile. Dinner that evening was a tense affair. Elizabeth maintained a rigid politeness toward Isaiah, asking carefully neutral questions about his work at the university library. Charles and William made more genuine efforts, engaging him in conversations about books, sports, and current events. Through it all, Isaiah was unfailingly polite, intelligent, and charming. Everything Emmeline knew him to be. She could see the surprise on her brothers' faces as they realized this man their sister had chosen was nothing like the fortune-hunting interloper their mother had described. After dinner, as they gathered in the drawing room for coffee, Elizabeth suddenly turned to Isaiah. "Why don't you tell us about your family, Mr. Blake? Emmeline has told us so little." The question felt like a trap, but Isaiah answered calmly. "My father was a professor of American history at Howard University. My mother teaches high school English in D.C. I have 2 younger sisters. One's a doctor, the other's studying law." Elizabeth's eyebrows rose slightly. "A family of academics. A family that values education," Isaiah corrected gently, "just as yours values finance and tradition." "And what do your parents think of your relationship with my daughter?" Elizabeth pressed. "Mother," Emmeline warned. "It's all right," Isaiah assured her. "My parents were concerned at first, Mrs. Rothschild. Not because Emmeline is white, but because they worried about the class differences, about how she might be treated by some in your circles. But when they spoke with her on the phone and heard how happy she was, they gave us their blessing." "You've spoken with his parents?" Elizabeth asked Emmeline, clearly surprised. "Every Sunday," Emmeline confirmed. "They're wonderful people. They've made me feel welcome in a way that—" She trailed off, not wanting to finish the accusatory thought. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Finally, Charles stood. "We should all get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day with Father's surgery." As they prepared to head upstairs, Elizabeth called Emmeline back. "A moment, please." When they were alone, Elizabeth studied her daughter's face. "You've changed." "Yes," Emmeline agreed simply. "This life you've chosen, it's really what you want? Working in a bookstore? Living in a small apartment? When you could have had so much more." "I have exactly what I want, Mother," Emmeline said gently. "Someone who loves me for who I am, not what my name can do for them. Work that matters to me, even if it doesn't come with prestige or power. The freedom to write, to choose my own path." Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprising Emmeline completely, she reached out to touch her daughter's cheek. "You remind me of myself at your age." Before I became this. What do you mean? I had dreams too, once, Elizabeth admitted. Art school in Paris. A studio of my own. But my parents had other plans, just as your father and I had plans for you. Emmeline stared at her mother in shock. I never knew. It wasn't relevant, Elizabeth said, her usual crispness returning. I made my choice. I built this life with your father. I don't regret it. But you understand why I had to make a different choice, Emmeline said, a statement rather than a question. Elizabeth didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, Your Isaiah is not what I expected. He's the best man I've ever known, Emmeline said simply. We'll see, Elizabeth replied, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Good night, Emmeline. Good night, Mother. As Emmeline climbed the stairs to her bedroom, she felt a strange sense of possibility. For the first time, she'd glimpsed a human being beneath her mother's perfect facade. The walls between them hadn't come down, not completely, but perhaps a small window had opened. She slipped quietly into Isaiah's room, finding him reading by the bedside lamp. How was your private conversation with your mother? He asked, setting down his book. Surprising, Emmeline admitted, sitting beside him on the bed. I think there might be hope for us, after all. Not just with my father, but with all of them. I'm glad, Isaiah said, pulling her close. You need your family, Emmeline. And whether they realize it yet or not, they need you too. As they sat together in the quiet of the grand old house, Emmeline found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here, from secret letters hidden in books to this moment of tentative reconciliation. Tomorrow would bring her father's surgery, with all its fears and uncertainties. But for tonight, in Isaiah's arms, she felt something she'd never expected to feel in this house again. Hope. Morning arrived with gray skies and a light drizzle. Typical Boston weather that Emmeline hadn't missed during her time in sunny California. The entire Rothschild family gathered early for breakfast. The conversation stilted and focused almost exclusively on Harold's upcoming surgery. The procedure should take about 5 hours, Charles explained, having spoken at length with the doctors. If all goes well, he'll spend 2 days in intensive care and then move to a regular room. And the recovery a home? William asked. Several weeks at least, Elizabeth replied. The doctors say he'll need to make significant lifestyle changes. Less work, better diet, regular exercise. Father won't like that, Emmeline observed with a small smile. Especially the less work part. He'll have no choice, Elizabeth said firmly. I won't have him working himself into another heart attack. Isaiah had been quiet throughout breakfast, letting the family talk. Now he spoke up. My uncle went through a similar surgery last year. The cardiac rehabilitation program made a big difference in his recovery. Elizabeth looked at him with surprise, as if she'd forgotten he was there. Yes, well, we'll have the best specialists, of course. Of course, Isaiah agreed politely. But the emotional support is just as important as the medical care. Having family around can make all the difference. His eyes met Emmeline's across the table, and she knew he was thinking of her, torn between her new life in California and her family in Boston. After breakfast, they all drove to the hospital together. The surgery was scheduled for 9 a.m., and the family gathered in Harold's room for those tense moments before he was taken to the operating room. Harold looked even paler than the day before, the reality of the surgery clearly weighing on him. He spoke briefly with each family member. Business instructions for Charles, words of encouragement for William's law studies, a request for Elizabeth to stop worrying quite so visibly. When he turned to Emmeline, his expression softened. Promise me something, he said, taking her hand. Anything, Father. Don't disappear again after this. Whether I make it through this surgery or not. Don't talk like that, Emmeline interrupted. It's a possibility we have to acknowledge, Harold said firmly. So listen to me. Whatever happens, don't let today be the last time we see each other. Promise me. Tears filled Emmeline's eyes. I promise. Harold's gaze shifted to Isaiah, who stood respectfully near the door. Mr. Blake, a word, please. Isaiah approached the bed, surprise evident on his face. Yes, sir. Take care of her, Harold said simply. She's headstrong and too idealistic for her own good sometimes. But she's precious to me. I will, sir, Isaiah promised solemnly. With everything I have. Harold nodded once, satisfied. Then the nurses arrived to take him to surgery, and the family moved to the waiting room for what would be the longest 5 hours of their lives. The waiting room was private, reserved for the Rothschild family. Elizabeth paced endlessly. Charles worked on his laptop, his way of coping with stress. William flipped through magazines without reading them. Emmeline sat with Isaiah, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "I need coffee," Elizabeth announced after the first hour. "Does anyone else want some?" "I'll come with you," Emmeline offered impulsively. Her mother looked surprised but nodded. They walked in silence to the hospital cafeteria, ordered their coffees, and found a small table away from other people. "He'll be okay," Emmeline said, trying to reassure both her mother and herself. "The doctor said he's strong." "Your father has always been strong," Elizabeth agreed, too stubborn to let this beat him. They sipped their coffee in awkward silence until Elizabeth suddenly said, "I owe you an apology." Emmeline nearly choked on her drink. "You what?" "An apology," Elizabeth repeated, looking uncomfortable. "For how I reacted when we found those letters. For the things I said about Isaiah without knowing him. For not seeing what was happening with you all those years." "What do you mean?" Elizabeth sighed. "You were always different from your brothers, quieter, more introspective. I thought it was just shyness that would pass. I never considered that maybe the life we planned for you wasn't the one you wanted. I tried to tell you," Emmeline said quietly. "So many times. You and father never listened. We thought we knew best," Elizabeth admitted. "Parents usually do. Sometimes we're right. Sometimes," she gestured vaguely, "sometimes we're terribly wrong." Emmeline stared at her mother, wondering what had prompted this unexpected moment of self-reflection. "Is this because of father's heart attack? Because you're afraid he might?" "Partly," Elizabeth interrupted. "Nothing like a medical crisis to clarify one's priorities. But also because of what I saw last night at dinner." "What do you mean?" "The way you look at him," Elizabeth said simply. "The way he looks at you. It's how your father and I used to look at each other before business and social obligations took over our lives." "You still love father," Emmeline said. "It wasn't a question." "Of course I do," Elizabeth replied. "But somewhere along the way, we forgot to show it. We became business partners raising children rather than partners in life." Emmeline reached across the table to take her mother's hand, something she couldn't remember doing since she was a small child. "It's not too late, you know, for you and father." Elizabeth's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Perhaps not." She straightened, composing herself. "And perhaps not too late for this family to heal as well." Back in the waiting room, the hours crept by. Finally, the surgeon appeared, still in his scrubs, looking tired but pleased. "The surgery was successful," he announced to the relieved family. "We were able to bypass all 3 blocked arteries. Mr. Rothschild is in recovery now. He's not out of the woods yet, but the procedure itself went as well as we could have hoped." Elizabeth sagged with relief, and Charles put a steadying arm around her shoulders. William let out a whoop that earned him a stern look from passing nurse. "When can we see him?" Emmeline asked. "He'll be in intensive care for at least 48 hours, the surgeon explained. Only brief visits, one person at a time. He'll be heavily sedated for most of today. But he'll recover," Elizabeth pressed. "Fully recover? With proper care and lifestyle changes, yes, he should make a complete recovery," the surgeon assured them. The heart muscle itself wasn't severely damaged, which is excellent news. After the surgeon left, the tension that had been holding the family together seemed to dissolve. Charles announced he needed to make some business calls to update the company board. William mentioned meeting a law school friend for lunch. "You should all go home and rest," Elizabeth told them. "I'll stay here in case there's any news." "I'll stay with you, Mother," Emmeline offered. Elizabeth shook her head. "No need for both of us to sit in this waiting room. Go back to the house with Isaiah. Get some real food, some rest. You can come back this evening." It was the first time Elizabeth had used Isaiah's first name, a small but significant acknowledgement. Emmeline didn't miss the slight widening of Isaiah's eyes. "Are you sure?" Emmeline asked. Positive, Elizabeth said. I want some time alone with your father when he wakes up anyway. Back at the Rothschild estate, Emmeline and Isaiah found themselves with unexpected free time. The house was quiet, with Charles at the office and William meeting his friend. Strange to be here without your parents, Isaiah commented as they wandered through the grand rooms. It feels less intimidating somehow, Emmeline admitted. Like just a house, not a fortress. Want to show me your favorite spots? Isaiah suggested. The places that mattered to you growing up? Emmeline took his hand and led him through the house. The window seat where she used to read for hours. The music room where she'd reluctantly practiced piano. The small courtyard garden where she'd written her first poems. Finally, they came to the library, the place where their love story had begun. It looks exactly the same, Isaiah said, running his fingers along the shelves he'd once carefully cataloged. Except the archivist isn't as handsome, Emmeline teased. Father hired someone new after you left, an elderly gentleman who falls asleep among the books. They moved deeper into the library, to the secluded corner where they'd shared so many conversations. Emmeline pointed to a particular shelf. That's where I hid my first note to you, she said softly. In the Dickens collection. Isaiah smiled at the memory. I was so surprised, and then so nervous about whether I should reply. I'm glad you did. So am I. Emmeline walked to the wall panel that Maria had discovered, the hidden compartment where they'd stored their most precious letters. I wonder if it's still empty, she mused, pushing gently on the panel. To her surprise, it slid open easily. Inside was a single envelope. What's that? Isaiah asked, coming to stand beside her. Emmeline took out the envelope. It was addressed simply, to Emmeline and Isaiah. I don't recognize the handwriting, she said, turning it over. Open it, Isaiah urged. Inside was a letter dated just 3 weeks earlier. To my daughter and the man she chose. If you're reading this, you've returned to the house, perhaps because of my health situation, which has been worsening for months, though I've kept that from the family. I write this not knowing if I'll have the chance to say these words in person. Emmeline, your departure broke your mother's heart and wounded my pride. But in the quiet moments since you've been gone, I've had cause to reflect on my role in driving you away. We raised you to be intelligent and independent, then punished you for exercising those very qualities when your choices didn't align with our plans. As for you, Mr. Blake, I judged you without knowing you, based on outdated prejudices I would deny harboring. My generation was taught certain boundaries were immutable. Clearly, the world has moved beyond such thinking, and perhaps it's time I did as well. I don't know what the future holds for this family, but I've instructed Davis to ensure that regardless of what happens to me, your place in this family remains secure, Emmeline. And by extension, that includes the man you've chosen to share your life with. I hope someday to have the opportunity to know you both better, on your terms rather than mine. With newfound humility, Harold Rothschild. Tears streamed down Emmeline's face as she finished reading. He wrote this before his heart attack. Before we came back, Isaiah put his arm around her shoulders. He was already changing his mind about us. I need to tell him I found this, Emmeline said. As soon as he's well enough. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about what the letter might mean for their future. Not a complete reconciliation, perhaps, but the beginning of one. A door left open rather than slammed shut. That evening, when they returned to the hospital, they found Harold awake, though groggy from pain medication. Elizabeth sat beside him, holding his hand, a display of affection Emmeline couldn't remember seeing since childhood. He's been asking for you, Elizabeth told Emmeline. The doctors say he can have visitors for 5 minutes, one at a time. You go first, Isaiah encouraged. I'll wait out here. Emmeline entered the ICU room quietly. Her father looked frail among all the machines monitoring his condition, but his eyes were alert as they focused on her. You found my letter, he said weakly. Emmeline nodded, moving to his bedside. How did you know? Your expression, Harold replied. Always could read your face like a book. Did you mean it? Emmeline asked. What you wrote. Every word, her father confirmed. Though I'd have phrased it more eloquently, if I'd known I'd live to discuss it with you. His attempt at humor made Emmeline smile through her tears. I wasn't sure I'd have a place in this family anymore, she admitted. Harold's hand found hers, his grip weak but determined. You'll always be a Rothschild, Emmeline, even if you become a Blake. I love him, Father. I'm beginning to understand why, Harold said. He's not what I expected. He's better, Emmeline said simply. Perhaps so. Harold's eyes drifted closed, the medication pulling him back towards sleep. Bring him in to see me tomorrow, when I'm more alert. We should talk man to man. I will, Emmeline promised, leaning down to kiss her father's forehead. Rest now. Over the next week, Harold's condition steadily improved. He moved from intensive care to a regular room, and the doctors spoke optimistically about his recovery. The family fell into a routine of hospital visits, with Emmeline and Isaiah continuing to stay at the Rothschild estate. During this time, something remarkable happened. Slowly, cautiously, barriers began to come down. Charles took Isaiah out for drinks one evening, returning hours later having discovered their shared passion for jazz music. William asked Isaiah's advice about possibly transferring to an environmental science program. Even Elizabeth, most resistant of all, began to engage Isaiah in real conversation over morning coffee. As for Harold, once he was well enough for longer visits, he made good on his promise to speak with Isaiah. Emmeline never knew exactly what they discussed during their private conversation, but both men emerged from it with a new understanding between them. He offered me a job, Isaiah told Emmeline afterward, shaking his head in disbelief. A job? Doing what? Overseeing the digitization of the Rothschild financial archives, Isaiah explained. Apparently they go back to the 1800s, and he wants them preserved properly. Are you going to take it? Emmeline asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Isaiah studied her face. You're worried I might say yes. That we'd move back to Boston, back under your family's influence. The thought crossed my mind, she admitted. I told him I was honored by the offer, but that we have a life in California now, Isaiah said. A good life that we've built together. I said we'd visit more often, but that our home is there now. Emmeline released the breath she'd been holding. What did he say to that? He said he respected the decision, Isaiah replied with a smile, and that the offer remains open if we ever change our minds. 2 weeks after the surgery, Harold was discharged from the hospital. The doctors were pleased with his recovery, but insisted on strict limitations to his work schedule and significant changes to his diet and exercise habits. I never thought I'd see the day when Father would eat oatmeal for breakfast, William joked as the family gathered for Harold's first morning home. Or when Mother would hide his phone to keep him from checking stock prices, Charles added with a grin. I can hear you both, Harold grumbled from his seat at the head of the table, though there was no real annoyance in his tone. Watching her family banter together, Emmeline felt a sense of peace she hadn't expected to find in this house again. Isaiah sat beside her, accepted if not yet fully embraced, and that was more than she had dared to hope for when they'd flown to Boston. Later that day, as Harold rested in his study, Emmeline found herself alone with her mother in the garden. We're going back to California tomorrow, Emmeline said, breaking the news gently. Elizabeth nodded, her expression thoughtful rather than upset. I expected as much. You have your life there now. We'll come back for visits, Emmeline promised. And you and Father could come to California sometime, when he's stronger. Perhaps we will, Elizabeth said, surprising her. I've never seen the Pacific coast. They walked in companionable silence for a moment before Elizabeth spoke again. I want you to have something before you go. She handed Emmeline a small, worn leather journal. What is this? My poetry, Elizabeth replied softly. From before I married your father. I thought perhaps you'd like to read it. To understand that part of me that I put away so long ago. Emmeline stared at the journal in shock. I never knew you wrote poetry. No one did, except my mother, Elizabeth said. Just as no one knew about your writing until Isaiah encouraged you to share it. Thank you, Emmeline said, touched beyond words by this unexpected gift. This glimpse in her mother's hidden self. There's something else, Elizabeth added, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small velvet box. This was my grandmother's. I want you to have it for when you and Isaiah make your engagement official. Inside the box was a delicate diamond ring with smaller sapphires on either side, elegant but not ostentatious. "Mother, I can't." "You can," Elizabeth interrupted firmly. "It should have been yours all along. I was saving it for your wedding to James Anderson, but—" She shrugged slightly. "Plans change." "They certainly do," Emmeline agreed, carefully taking the box. "Thank you. This means more than you know." That evening, the Rothschild family hosted a small dinner, just the immediate family plus Isaiah. There were no society friends, no business associates, just the people who mattered most. Harold, still weak but determined to sit at the head of the table, raised his glass of sparkling water. "To family," he said simply, in all its unexpected forms. The others echoed the toast, and Emmeline felt Isaiah's hand find hers beneath the table. They exchanged a look full of love and wonder at how far they'd come from those first furtive notes hidden in books. The next morning, as they prepared to leave for the airport, the entire family gathered to say goodbye. There were hugs from her brothers, a firm handshake for Isaiah from Harold, and finally, most surprisingly, a warm embrace from Elizabeth. "Take care of each other," she whispered in Emmeline's ear, "and call when you arrive safely." "I will," Emmeline promised. "And you take care of Father. Make sure he follows doctor's orders." "Oh, I intend to," Elizabeth said with unusual determination. "His heart attack scared me more than I care to admit. It made me realize how easily we can lose what matters most." As their car pulled away from the estate, Emmeline turned to watch her childhood home recede in the distance. "I never thought I'd feel sad leaving this place," she admitted to Isaiah. "But I do. It's different now," he pointed out. "It's not a prison anymore. It's just a place where your family lives. A place we can visit and then leave again." "When did you get so wise?" she asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I've always been wise," Isaiah teased. "It's why you fell in love with me, remember? My brilliant insights hidden in those letters you were never meant to read." "Speaking of letters," Emmeline said, reaching into her bag, "I have something for you." She handed him an envelope with his name written on it in her elegant handwriting. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it when we get home," she told him. "It's the beginning of a new chapter for us." 3 days later, they were back in their small Berkeley apartment. The morning sun cast familiar patterns on their kitchen floor as they resumed their routine. Coffee together before Isaiah left for the university library and Emmeline for her bookstore. "It feels different being back here," Isaiah observed. "Like our perspective has shifted. California feels more like home now," Emmeline agreed. "Because we've chosen it together. Because we know we can leave and come back. Because we're free to make those choices." That evening, after dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant, they walked along the Berkeley Marina, watching the sunset over the San Francisco Bay. "I almost forgot," Isaiah said suddenly. "You gave me a letter to open when we got home. Can I read it now?" Emmeline nodded, suddenly nervous as he pulled the envelope from his pocket and carefully opened it. "My beloved Isaiah, by the time you read this, we'll be back in our California home, our haven, the life we've built together far from the expectations and traditions that once bound me. These past weeks have taught me something important. While I've found my freedom and my voice with you, I've also rediscovered my family, not as the controlling force they once were, but as flawed, complex people capable of growth and change, just as I am. I choose you today, just as I chose you the day I ran from my engagement party. I choose our simple life of books and learning and honest work. I choose the man who saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. But I also choose to remain connected to my roots, to the family that shaped me, for better and worse. I choose to build bridges rather than burn them. And so I ask you this, will you marry me, Isaiah Blake? Not in some grand Rothschild spectacle, but in a simple ceremony by the ocean, with your family in mind bearing witness to what we've known since those first letters. That love can transcend every boundary if we're brave enough to fight for it. All my love, always and forever. Emmeline, soon-to-be Blake. Isaiah looked up from the letter, his eyes shining with emotion. You're proposing to me? I am, Emmeline confirmed, pulling her grandmother's ring from her pocket. What do you say, Isaiah Blake? Ready to make our story official? Instead of answering, Isaiah pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, the sunset painting them in gold as the water lapped gently against the shore. "Is that a yes?" Emmeline asked when they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing. "That's a yes," Isaiah confirmed, holding out his hand for her to slip the ring onto his finger, a placeholder until they could choose one together. 1,000 times yes. 6 months later, on a perfect California spring day, Emmeline and Isaiah were married on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The ceremony was small but meaningful. Isaiah's parents and sisters, the entire Rothschild family, Harold looking much healthier after months of cardiac rehabilitation, Maggie from the bookworm, and a few close friends from their new life. Emmeline wore a simple white dress, her hair loose in the ocean breeze. Isaiah looked handsome in a blue suit, his smile radiant as she walked toward him. To everyone's surprise, Harold Rothschild had asked to say a few words during the ceremony. "When my daughter left Boston for love, I thought I'd lost her forever," he said, his voice strong despite his recent health challenges. "I was wrong. Instead, our family gained a son, and Emmeline gained something I'd failed to give her, the freedom to be herself." Elizabeth, standing beside her husband, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Emmeline had never seen her mother cry in public before. "The letters they were never meant to read," Harold continued, nodding toward the collection of their correspondence that Emmeline and Isaiah had gathered into a keepsake book displayed on a small table with their rings. "Those letters changed all our lives. They taught me that love doesn't follow rules or respect boundaries. It simply is. And when it's real, as it clearly is between these two remarkable people, nothing can stand in its way." After the ceremony, as they danced under strings of lights with the ocean behind them, Isaiah held Emmeline close. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Completely," she replied. "I have everything I ever wanted: you, my writing, my family, a life that's truly mine. There's one more thing," Isaiah said mysteriously. "A wedding gift from your father." "What is it?" "He's funding a small press," Isaiah explained, "for new poets, focusing on voices that might otherwise go unheard. He wants you to run it." Emmeline stared at him in disbelief. "My father is funding a poetry press? For me, people can change," Isaiah reminded her, "if they love someone enough to try." As the celebration continued around them, Emmeline looked over at her family. Her father deep in conversation with Isaiah's father about education reform, her mother showing Isaiah's sister's photos on her phone, her brothers laughing with Isaiah's college friends. Boundaries crossed, worlds merged, love triumphant. Later that night, after the guests had gone and they stood alone on the cliff watching moonlight on the water, Emmeline took out a small notebook, the journal she'd started the night before they left Boston. "I have something for you," she told Isaiah, handing him the journal. He opened it to find page after page of poetry, her words, her heart, her journey from the sheltered Rothschild daughter to the woman who stood beside him now. The final poem was titled simply Letters. "We wrote our love in hidden ink, on pages meant for us alone. But truth has ways of breaking free. From every wall and every stone, what started as our secret code became the key that set me free. The courage in your written words showed me who I was meant to be. Now here we stand beneath the stars. Our story open for all to see. The letters they were never meant to read became the life I was meant to lead." Isaiah closed the journal gently, pulling Emmeline into his arms. "I love you, Emmeline Blake." "I love you too, Isaiah Blake," she whispered against his lips. "Always and forever." As they kissed under the moonlight, Emmeline thought about the journey that had brought them here, from secret notes hidden in books to this moment of perfect happiness. She thought about her family, slowly but surely accepting the choices she'd made. She thought about the poetry press, the chance to help other voices be heard. Most of all, she thought about love, how it had the power to cross boundaries, to challenge traditions, to heal old wounds. How it had transformed not just her life, but the lives of everyone it touched. The letters they were never meant to read had become the story they were always meant to live. And what a beautiful story it was. The end.